The Charlotte Ledger Podcast is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network.
This episode of the Charlotte Ledger Podcast is sponsored by Crimson Park Digital. For Charlotte businesses, getting noticed and staying visible is tougher than ever. That's where Crimson Park Digital comes in, a boutique marketing agency delivering bespoke strategies for advertising, content, social media, and search engines. They're helping bold, service-focused brands get seen, capture demand, and turn attention into revenue. Ready to bolster your marketing this year? Visit crimsonparkdigital.com to get started.
Welcome to the Charlotte Ledger Podcast. I am Cooper Hall, the summer reporting intern at the Charlotte Ledger. To find out more about the Charlotte Ledger, visit thecharlotteledger.com. I'm joined today by Doug Hicks, the president of Davidson College, to talk about Davidson's new financial aid structure and all things higher education. I'm so excited to talk to you today. I think it only makes sense to start with the newest announcement of your new financial aid package. For our listeners who maybe aren't super familiar with the announcement, can you give a quick breakdown?
Sure. Well, it's good to be with you. Davidson College has been committed for a long time to being affordable and accessible. And so we've continued to build on that commitment, especially over the last 2 decades, to make students from all backgrounds and all socioeconomic families to be able to get to Davidson. And so the latest announcement is to say we want to focus on a simple message and a clear message for families who may not talk the jargon of higher education like Pell Grants or need-based scholarship, etc., but who do want to know what it would actually cost them to come to college. We are proud of our excellent education we offer to students, and now we're making it even more accessible and affordable. So for families whose income is less than $85,000 a year, they'll be able to come to Davidson essentially without cost. So they'll have no tuition fees, lodging, or meals. So that will all be paid for by Davidson College and our generous alumni and others who've made that possible. For students coming from families who earn between $85,000 and $175,000 a year, which goes up to about 8 in 10 American families at $175,000. For those families between $85,000 and $175,000, they'll have their tuition covered by Davidson College. And they might get further financial aid on room and meals, depending on their situation. And then for families above $175,000, they will continue to get a generous package based on the need of the family. And those closer to $175,000 for family income will receive financial aid close to tuition, and then it will go from there upwards.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about how this is actually working in practice? Like, where is the money to meet these students' needs coming from?
Sure. It's being funded from various sources at the college. For the most part, we fund about 93% of our financial aid ourselves, and then there's some money in Pell Grants that does come from the federal government. It's, again, about one of every $13 that's spent. It comes from the feds. But the rest of the money comes from our endowment, which is really those endowed scholarships and other gifts that people have made over the years to Davidson College, and then we've invested that money so that we're able to take a payout each year from the endowment. And then we also take the money for financial aid comes from annual givers, donors who are generous to the college. And then we're still taking some from our operating budget, money we can't spend for anything else, but we spend for financial aid. So the total budget this coming year, we'll spend between $85 and $87 million on financial aid that goes straight into students' pockets.
Is there any sort of, obviously there's so much money going towards this. Does that take away at all from other grants or scholarship for things like study abroad or research?
Well, what we try to do is make many of our high-impact practices, trips that are associated with courses or research opportunities on campus, and in some cases, study abroad, to be part of our overall picture. So we try to make those opportunities available to all students as well. And so many of those are included in the tuition and fees, and others are discounted for those with financial needs, so they'll receive a grant for that as well. But in the bigger picture, there's no doubt that money we spend for financial aid is money that we can't spend for other things. And we're making a deep commitment. We've called it the trust that Davidson has in its students, and the trust that comes from our trust and confidence that comes from our alums and friends and families. Our overall budget, if you include financial aid, is about $250 million a year. When you take out the financial aid, it's almost, it's about $175, $180 million a year. So we are committing a substantial portion on financial aid that we can't thus spend on other things.
Why do you guys have such a commitment to providing comprehensive financial aid for students?
Our statement of purpose talks about how we will educate students from all backgrounds, all faiths, all nationalities, all ethnicities and races. And so it's important for us to make sure that Davidson is accessible and affordable. And we believe that many families in the Charlotte area, North Carolina, across the country, and in fact beyond that, around the world, don't know that Davidson might be accessible for them. And so we also believe that students who are here at Davidson are learning from people from many different backgrounds. I came from a middle-class background in Indiana. I'm a Midwesterner, I'm a Hoosier, and my dad was a professor and my mom was a nurse. And so the benefit I had from studying alongside people from all parts of the country and the world, from people who are working class to people who are affluent, it helped me to learn. And so we're paying this forward with those who support the college. And from the college itself, we believe that education is better when you learn from people from many, many perspectives. And when you look around campus, you see people whose families do very different things. And we believe that a Davidson College education should be available to people regardless of what their parents or family members make or what their family or parents do. And they bring all of their experiences into the classroom and onto this campus.
Yeah. How are you trying to reach those families and students who might be from lower income backgrounds and think that Davidson isn't a place that they can go?
Well, that's a fantastic question. And this initiative takes that on directly. We're trying to make this message that you probably know if you're a parent or a guardian, you probably know what your family income is. And so this message of saying if you're a family earning under $85,000 annually and you live in the United States, you would be eligible for tuition, room, board, and fees at Davidson College paid for. If your family's above that, but under 175, that tuition is a minimum scholarship that you'll receive at Davidson. So that's one way, is to get this message out there, to do it through our website, through social media. But then I also would mention we have conveyed this message already to all of our alumni and friends and current and recent parents and guardians. So we've sent it out to well over 30,000 people to let them know. We've reached out to media outlets. And then our admission and financial aid team spreads out like an army of those who are sharing the availability of a Davidson education. And as soon as high schools get back in session in August and September, a few dozen of our admissions counselors will be visiting high schools across the country and beyond. They'll do Zooms, they'll do virtual visits, but they'll also show up in high schools across Charlotte, across North Carolina and beyond, sharing this message. I'll also acknowledge we need to do better reaching all high schools. Last year, our class had 525 first-year students. They came from about 450 different high schools. So that you can just see that we don't name or have any real feeder schools. We have a few schools that tend to send us 1 or 2 or 3 a year, but we have to get this message out broadly, and that's one of the challenges.
Yeah. Do you expect that with this push to reach more students and also just the financial aid package in general, you'll have more applicants this upcoming school year?
We do think that's true. We think we will have more applicants than the roughly 8,000 applicants we get now. We don't know. We haven't done this specific move before, but we're committed to having more applicants. We also made another change, which hasn't been as much in the headlines, but applying to Davidson starting this year will be free for all applicants. And we also think that removes another barrier. You won't have to pay $50 or $75 to apply And so while we want only applicants who have a serious interest in the college to apply, we also want to make it, we don't want a barrier of a figure under $100 to keep people from applying. So we think that those will help us. There's a demographic cliff. Some people are talking about how there are fewer students in the United States of age 17 or 18 who are graduating high school. But we've managed to go against that trend so far, and we are still highly selective. So we're not doing it to increase our applicant pool. We're doing it to broaden the reach of our school to people of all backgrounds.
Yeah. You kind of just mentioned like the trend of not as many people graduating high school, and there's also a trend of decreased enrollment in colleges and people questioning the value of a liberal arts education. How is Davidson kind of combating that mindset and trying to like prove that coming to Davidson is still a valuable experience?
Yeah. So first of all, we believe that our alumni, our alumni who are out in the world are great examples, and telling their stories of what they're doing is our number one most important thing. I was just spending a couple of days with our most famous alumnus, Stephen Curry, and he was dedicating much of the last 2 days to our men's basketball team, to those scholar athletes, to those students, and sharing his story with them. We also met with other alums at Goldman Sachs in downtown Manhattan to hear their stories and how they got into the finance sector. We had the coach of the NYU basketball team, the women's team. She's a Davidson alum. She met with our guys as well. And so telling those stories is one important way. We also we're trying to share as broadly as possible that last year, 96% of our students, our graduates from 2025, were gainfully employed or were in graduate school 6 months after graduation. Our students are finding wonderful things to do after they graduate. And so that's another key part of our story, is that our students are not just finding jobs, they're finding good, meaningful jobs, and they're going on to graduate professional school, which has always been a part of our story. And then I spend time talking about the value of our experience. We're very fortunate to be highly selective. We admit only 1 in 8 applicants now, and then 50% of those students come, and then we graduate them. They graduate at 92%. So we are already showing the value of a Davidson education, but that's in some ways swimming upstream for all of the rhetoric that higher ed is in trouble. We happen to be in a very strong position in higher ed, and we just want to continue that and to tell that story mostly through our graduates.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, not that Davidson is looking to consolidate anytime soon, but obviously right next door, Elon and Queens are emerging, and that's in part because of financial trouble and decreased enrollment. Do you have any thoughts on that move and also just the general trend of consolidation in higher education?
There is no doubt that in a higher education system or network with public and private with about 6,000 institutions, that there's going to be some consolidations, there's going to be some closings. There are financial challenges to what we're doing in higher education generally. We're fortunate at Davidson. So I'm concerned about as a sector, I'm concerned about it for the country, because higher ed institutions do a lot of good for serving the country, for educating students who don't have, higher ed remains a key way for people to have a ladder up for opportunity. And so I think it's sad when some really great institutions are troubled. I don't worry about Davidson per se because of the quality of what we're doing and the continued market demand that we have for the product, if you will. And I don't like to talk in those terms, but we have a business model and we're offering a product of education. It's an experience. So our consumers then become our products. So higher ed is a pretty interesting market, if you will, but we have to pay attention to that. So we try to diversify where our students come from across the state, across different high schools in the Charlotte region and beyond, across the country, across the world. And because, it's hard to know what the 17-year-old mind is. And we absolutely, our lifeline is students who are coming out of high school who want to come and get a Davidson education. Fortunately, we're doing quite well.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, we talked about how this new move might boost applications this next year, but how has your guys' enrollment been the past few years? Are you seeing any declining trends or things staying pretty steady?
Things are very, very strong. We've gone up over recent years by double digits overall in terms of our applicants. We were basically flat last year, but it's consolidating at a higher and higher level. Our selectivity has gone up, so we have more applicants for every spot. Our yield continues to be about 50% of the students to whom we say yes to Davidson. Our trends have been strong and in some ways counter market in that sense. We did see a drop this year in international student applications. That has happened naturally, but we do believe that most of those forces are far beyond Davidson College. They're geopolitical, and we continue to get a world-class applicant pool from our international students. So it doesn't concern us as much as it concerns me that there are more international barriers for movement of talent. And every international student, just on that part of our admission pool, every international student who comes and graduates, we either have brain gain for them to stay in the United States. That's the opposite of brain drain. We have brain gain for Charlotte, for this area, for the country. Or they take Davidson values, they take American values back to their country. And that's an absolutely critical part of what we do. So overall, we continue to be strong, but I don't take it for granted that the 17 and 18-year-olds of today are going to have the same tastes and preferences for college that their predecessors had. And so we have to every year tell that story and make sure our alumni are telling that story, that they're recommending a Wildcat to our admissions office so we can continue to do well.
We'll be right back to the conversation. But first, this episode of the Charlotte Ledger podcast is presented by Crimson Park Digital, boutique marketing for Charlotte's boldest brands.
Thinking about that kind of changing higher ed market and how you keep reaching students, is there any course offerings or majors or programs that you guys are reconsidering or kind of restructuring or consolidating at all?
We look at our curriculum and our programs all of the time. We have expanded our offerings in terms of what majors and minors are available. So we haven't consolidated. We do find areas of strength where by the foreign language, the international languages, we have created more opportunities for students studying Spanish, French, Arabic, Mandarin, German, Latin, Hebrew, and Greek to learn from each other and for faculty to learn from each other. But you can get majors in almost all of those languages and the classics. Instead, we've tried to build on strength. We've built up our computer science programs over the last 5 years. We've built up data science. We continue to see that biology, chemistry, economics, and psychology are our largest majors, and that trend continues. So again, we are focused on the liberal arts experience, and the major is just one part. It's about a third of an overall education. And we think in this age of AI that the broad liberal arts thinking, the creativity, the critical thinking is more needed than it's ever been before.
Yeah, can you expand on that? We've been talking about how people are kind of questioning the value of a liberal arts degree in general. And you've talked a lot about why higher education is important for students, but why do you think a liberal arts education specifically is valuable?
Yeah. I've had 2 CEOs of some of the largest banks and institutions in Charlotte sit in that chair in my office say that they want to hire all liberal arts graduates or many liberal arts graduates because they learn the skills that are needed in their workplace. So those skills are the ability to ask great questions, the ability to write well, to work well in diverse groups, to be creative, to take leadership roles. And one CEO is a close friend of the college, but not a graduate, has said it's the leadership skills that don't necessarily emerge in the training sessions or in the first couple of years of getting accustomed to the job. It's 5 years out when those liberal arts skills start to shine. And we believe that very much. When AI is getting better and better, if AI is human driven in terms of innovation, limits. But that capacity that's driven by machines through human ingenuity is being able to do more and more technical skills. But somebody has to drive that bus. Somebody has to guide those machines to be able to have the right processes to give the right answers. I had a good friend who said, one of my employees said that this spreadsheet done by AI is 95% right. And the leader said, well, you know what that means? And I said, it means it's wrong. He said, that's right. It is wrong. If it's 95% correct, that's not good enough for most business processes. It has to be right without errors. So you have to be able to have the sense of measure, the sense of context to be able to say, this AI process is working the way it's supposed to be. And the liberal arts people who learn, students, graduates who are learning history, learning ethics, learning philosophy, who understand what it means, how language conveys culture, as well as specific words. Those are the kind of things that serve people in really important leadership positions in their workplace.
Yeah, it's a little bit off topic, but I'm just curious as a college student myself who has kind of like seen AI come into education and professors trying to figure that out. How do you guys deal with that at Davidson? Because obviously it's not something you can ignore entirely, but at the same time, like you just said, there's a lot of value outside of AI. So how do you kind of balance that in your education?
It's a great question. And not surprisingly, it's one that our faculty are grappling with right now actively. In 2 weeks, we'll have a meeting we're calling it a seminar that's a week long. And we'll have 85 to 100 of our faculty. So a significant share of our 225 faculty members will dedicate a week to redesigning their syllabi for the age of AI and how to more effectively integrate AI into their courses. And we have everyone who believes from we should be pencil and paper in class and it should all be oral discussion, tech-free, so that we can hold each other to account, to people who are using generative and agentic AI in all of their assignments and in their classes, in fact. I do believe that the head of open learning, Dave Dixon at MIT, I spoke to him a few weeks ago. He believes that some kind of model of essentially flipping the classroom in a major way and having AI assist in course preparation, in class session preparation, and then coming in and having it very human. So instead of lecturing, having that kind of learning through lecture tailored to each person happening before class, and then in class having it be discussion-based. Well, that's what we do. Our average class size is under 20, and it's set up for discussion and debates. We have faculty who are in different positions, but I think everyone is opening up to what AI offers and also what its threats are. So what we want to try to do is have AI not short-circuit the important cognitive learning that happens, like the value of reading an actual book instead of a summary. That reading skill is something everybody has to learn. But then to harness AI for acquiring knowledge in ways that were not possible, even, I'll say 5 years ago, but even 6 months ago, there are things that we couldn't know or we couldn't accomplish that can be accomplished now. That's dizzying for faculty who might have had a similar syllabus for the last decade, realizing they have to change it to keep up with tech changes like at the beginning of the semester to the end of the semester. There may be AI techniques they hadn't contemplated because they didn't exist. That's mind-blowing, but it's also pretty exciting.
Yeah, like keeping up with AI, what are other new programs or initiatives that are being considered or even implemented at Davidson?
Yeah. Well, the biggest initiative that we've announced in the last year is the Martin Institute for Public Good. So at Davidson, we talk about preparing students with humane instincts and disciplined and creative minds for lives of leadership and lives of service. So the Martin Institute, named after the Martin family, is helping us to combine a lot of our different programs that were already at Davidson and then add some new programs. So D.G. Martin was known as a popular public figure who bridged differences, who worked across the aisle, who stood up to run for Congress, who had a popular television show, who helped lead the North Carolina university system, and his wife, Harriet. They were very important, and Harriet continues as a very important public, civic-minded person. And so we have ethics and leadership, we have public policy, we have a focus on deliberation and free expression. We talk about the arts in public life in new ways, and we're talking about the community service that we do across the Charlotte area. We've put all of those together because at the end of the day, we're not just preparing graduates for the workplace, which we talked about, but we're also preparing them to be citizens. And we have to have citizens, graduates, who can talk to one another, who can get along, who can agree to disagree, who can deliberate together, can make public policy together. That's not what we're seeing. I won't say anything about Raleigh. I'll just say in Washington, it's not all we're seeing. We're not seeing people actually bridging differences and making policy. We're seeing lots of barking at each other, leadership by insult, and that's not effective. So the Institute for Public Good is focused on preparing people not just to be workers or business leaders, but also citizens. And we're pretty excited about that prospect.
Yeah, that sounds great. Actually, that's all the questions I had. Is there anything else that you want to add?
I'd like to emphasize how much Davidson values being part of the greater Charlotte community and how much Davidson benefits from being a part of a major metropolitan area, especially this one. We also want to share what we have to contribute, and not just in our graduates, but in our students, our faculty, our sports, and our cultural programs. And while there used to be, when I was a student here, there was a lot of farmland between Davidson College and UNC Charlotte and Exit 18. Now that is practically say megalopolis. It's people. Lake Norman has 120,000 people around it now. We want to be a part of the Charlotte area, and percent of our students are coming from greater Charlotte and this part of North Carolina. 20% of our graduates stay in Charlotte. And so that's like a plus 12, a plus 10%, however you want to put it. We are trying to be a brain gain for this area. And so I'm dedicated to that and happy to share some of these perspectives with you and listeners in Charlotte because it's our home base.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And for more information about the Charlotte Ledger, you can visit thecharlotteledger.com. This episode was produced by Lindsay Banks.
This episode of the Charlotte Ledger podcast was presented by Crimson Park Digital. Get your brand seen, capture demand, and turn attention into revenue now. Visit crimsonparkdigital.com to get started.
QueenCityPodcastNetwork.com.